Hi, I'm at a rehearsal studio, and I figured it is about time I make a brief video about a dear friend of mine who passed away about 2.5 years ago. And for whatever reason, there is criminally nothing about him on the internet. And he was such a great presence in the music gear industry, in the music industry, and not to mention in the lives of everybody he touched. So here is my video about my dear friend, my dear late friend, Greg Gualtieri. Greg was the owner and operator, builder, genius of Pendulum Audio in Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. He also did Anamod later on, which I think was one of the big final things he did before he got sick. Pendulum made studio gear and acoustic guitar gear, and that's how I met Greg. Back in 1993, before my first ever solo acoustic guitar gig of any quasi-merit at an all-girls Catholic high school, I met Greg because he was the only dealer in Sunrise acoustic guitar pickups. Now, that pickup was the one that the late, great Michael Hedges used, so of course, got to get what Michael Hedges used. And I met Greg on a Saturday morning at his house, which is where his workshop was. And he was just the most kindest, sweetest guy. Like, first impression, boom, what a very nice guy. And he asked me about my gear, and we spoke a bit. And I didn't know he made acoustic guitar preamps, so he had two models. And then when I said, oh, well, I'll buy the newer, more expensive model that you have, he said, yeah, you know what? You don't need that one. You just get the lesser expensive one. You'll be fine. To which my mind exploded, because I've never heard of someone trying to sell you a cheaper piece of gear, especially if they own the company. So his integrity was off the charts immediately, and over time he and I became friends. He mixed and mastered all of my CDs from Firewalker, which was the second full album, all the way up until the first Fractal Ensemble album, Seasons and Other Imperfect Circles. That was the last one that he was physically able to do. I think it may be the last one he ever did for anybody. So that's like 9 albums. He did solo acoustic stuff, band stuff, classical stuff, and Fractal Ensemble spoken word and music. So he covered everything and even did the rock opera. His genius knew no bounds. The only thing greater was his kindness and integrity. So Greg and I were friends for about 30 years. And over that time, I learned a lot from him, and learned about the business, learned about gear, and watched him mix it and master things. He was a man of amazing presence and talent, and a great guitar player, and a really good songwriter. And I'm not even really sure how to sum up everything. He was a guy who took no prisoners and suffered no fools. And for whatever reason, of which I'm eternally grateful, he had a deep belief in me and what I did. When the world went by not caring about it or yawning, he was a deep supporter of me. So from 1997, when he started working on stuff, we just became friends. And he, like I said, he did Firewalker, he did The Growing Stone, he did Reaching for the Brass Ring, he did the classical work Crescendo, and he took everything on. Like, there was never anything outside of his wheelhouse. He just jumped right in. Classical piece, sure, no problem, boom. Rock opera with spoken word dialogue and sound effects and Foley, sure, come on in. He never winced for a millisecond. He just jumped right in and did it. Greg was a great guy and a genius on top of that. And I loved hearing his stories about him meeting all these people, working with these people, you know, Brian May, Lou Reed, Metallica, like all these people, James Taylor. He was just an amazingly great guy, and I learned a lot from him. And it was not just a business relationship, although we did have that. We became friends. I mean, I would just stop by his place sometimes and just be like, hey dude, what's going on? I'd bring some baked goods and we'd just sit there and talk and whatever. And it was just a lot of fun. No, it wasn't fun, it was a joy. He was one of those really close friends. And there was, unlike a lot of these relationships in the music business or entertainment business, there's always a subtext of using somebody. Like, well, I'm here to see you and hang out, but I kind of need to get closer to you so I can get this gig or this done or meet this person. There was never any of that. It was just, hey dude, what's going on? How are you? And then the sky was the limit for conversation, and it was really wonderful. He got sick, I think, it's hard for me to remember, but somewhere in the early 2010s, 2011, 2012. And it was a slow decline that just was horrible to watch. What can I say? But he was at all times a great presence and just a really good friend. And those kind of people, the super talented and the super duper honest, are very rare. Very, very rare in the music business. And he was one of them. And his passing left a void for a lot of people. And unfortunately, there was no obituary even. There was no memorial service. There was no funeral as far as I know. It was just simply, I got a call that he had passed, and then that was it. His gear, if you're wondering, by the way, his gear is now no longer being made. Anamod was sold. So that's being made, I think, somewhere in Australia by some guy. But any Pendulum audio gear is neither being sold, built, or repaired. So I'm not sure exactly what to do if you have gear that needs to get repaired. But I could not stand any longer and not have his legacy of being a brilliant engineer, a brilliant creative mind, and a truly great human being go unspoken. A few people put up obituaries, but it's been silent. So if you like what I do in any way, shape, or form musically, I would ask that you say a little thought, prayer, whatever you wish to do for Greg, because Greg was an integral part of who I am and what I do for 30 years. His level of professionalism and gentle demanding, he sent me back to the showers a couple of times during recordings, like, nope, Mike, get back. Nope, this needs an electric guitar, go back. Nope, Mike, can't use that, go back. It was a very friendly relationship. And he kind of took me under his wing as a mentor. So he is someone I owe so much to. That I can't even put it into words, and I spent my life around words. But so Greg Gualtieri passed away in 2023 after a long illness. You can PM me if you want to know more. But he was a great man, he was a kind man, and he was a beloved friend in a business where friends are so very hard to find. So that is my little tribute to Greg Gualtieri. And Greg, if you can hear this, I thank you. And I really, really miss you. All right, take care.